Today we're going to be discussing groundwork as far as grooming, getting the horse to stand still. Before you ever tie a horse to something, to a trailer or in cross ties, you want to work with the horse on the ground and make sure that you've established standing still and using a brush, using a hoof pick to be able to work with the horse on the ground and get them used to those things before you tie them up in cross ties and things like that. You're going to notice we are in our rope halter. So the length of my lead rope is quite a bit longer than your standard lead rope. It's also attached permanently to the bottom of the halter, and you can see the rope halter is in place as far as if she moves or does something while I'm using my grooming tools, I want to be able to correct her. So this is more of a training method on how to get your horse to stand still when you groom. A lot of people face things like pawing, impatience, horses throwing their head, stepping on them, a lot of things that they face. We need to make sure and establish with our groundwork first so that when we start doing things with the horse, they know how to stand still, especially if you need a vet, you need a farrier, you need to do any kind of work with somebody coming up to your horse and standing still, especially if they're injured. This is a great place to start with your groundwork. So Pixie, for the most part, she's been schooled and trained enough in the rope halter that she should stand still. Okay, I don't mind if she squares up or if she moves her feet to kind of rest. But what I'm going to do when I'm establishing grooming is I've got my grooming box off to the side. The first thing, just basics today, I'm going to start with a curry. So my expectation of the horse is that they stand here no matter what I do with them. So if I'm grooming them, and I'll just go through currying her, you're going to watch, I've always got one hand on my rope. Now notice how I'm not going to have it twisted around my arm like a coil. If something happens, and again, for whatever reason you're thinking about safety, I'm not going to stand here and tether her to me, because if I do that, then I'm in danger if she does move or spook, that I'm attached to her and I cannot get away from her. So when I'm holding my rope, I'm going to fold it in half, and I can shorten it and lengthen it based on where I'm at and where I'm grooming. So when I'm currying her and I'm moving back towards her hind end and I'm staying to the side, I can lengthen my rope, but what you notice is she might look around a little with her head, but for the most part, she's standing still. She's not moving her feet. So no matter where I am on her body, what I'm doing and how I'm grooming her, I'm establishing a system where my horse stands still, because I need to be able to freely move around her. Now, if she does move, I'm going to correct her and put her right back in place. I'm going to switch hands, so I switch my lead rope as I switch sides. This is a good start for horses, teaching them that your expectation, no matter where you are, and I suggest grooming in different places. We happen to be grooming inside the arena today, but grooming in the hallway, grooming in their stalls, grooming in next to a horse trailer, grooming in a field of grass. Now that might be a little bit more difficult, but part of the purpose of grooming in grass is to make sure that when this halter goes on, the horses understand that it's work. Okay, so it's not time to eat, it's not time to graze, it's time to groom, it's time to maybe work and put a saddle on and those kinds of things, okay? So when I switch sides, I'm going to walk around to this side. All I'm doing is going through the basics. So once I have a curry, I'm going to switch to a brush, but notice how my expectation is the same. I'm holding the horse with one hand, grooming her even down her legs. But again, my expectation is that she stands still for all of this procedure. And if she were to back up or she were to move, I would want to be able to correct her and put her right back in place where she was. And sometimes some people can't even get to the grooming. They have to just work on the standing first. Okay, so I'd be able to brush her anywhere, and I switch sides, same thing on the opposite side. Okay, so when I'm moving around the horse, all I'm doing is switching hands. Okay, if she starts getting a little bit busy with her head, I might correct her and make her head straighten out. But I'm able to set the horse up for success. So in my expectation and consistency of behavior is that the horse stands here while I'm working. Anything that I'm doing, bathing, grooming, farrier work, anything that I'm doing, my expectation is that they stand for this procedure or for the work that we're doing. We are going to go to her feet because I want to show the best way. Again, I need two hands to be able to pick her feet up, but I need to make sure that my line is not going to get stuck, okay, or stepped on. So when I go to pick her feet, so if she's backing up, I'm going to make her walk back forward, place her right where I put her. I'm going to go down to her feet, and you're just going to have to learn how to adjust with your rope, okay? So I'm trying to keep it off the ground as I pick her feet up. You can notice that my line, if I keep it in my left arm, is under the horse. So that's not exactly the safest place to put it, is in your left arm. But when you're working, you can switch and look at the difference. If I lay it over my right arm, my left hand that's closest to the horse is holding the line. Okay, she's smelling the ground a little bit. I'm going to make a little bit of a correction. But notice how I'm not trapped. The rope isn't coiled around my arm. I don't have the rope under her legs, in the middle of her legs. So when I go to pick her feet, I've got access, and I can still keep my rope and work on what's called my ground tying by keeping my rope in my opposite hand, the hand or the arm that's away from the horse. Now, as I go to the hind legs, I made a little bit of a correction there. There's flies and stuff, but for the most part, I'm keeping her feet in the same place. I need to lengthen my rope to get to her hind leg. Okay, so she moved. She may have misinterpreted that as move her hind in. That's part of groundwork. But what I'm going to do is make sure that she stands whenever I go to her hind leg. Rope is against the arm. My arm that's the closest to the horse goes down her leg, picks her foot up. So notice how I'm still safe. Okay, I can shorten the slack if I need to. But for the most part, I'm picking her feet in a safe way. So if she does spook or something does happen, I'm not trapped in the rope, and I can step away from the rope and make my correction if I need to. Okay, so that's the left side of the horse. All we're going to do is we're going to switch to the right side. So when I switch to my right side, I might double my rope over. It's now on my outside hand. I'm facing her tail. The hand or arm that's the closest to the horse, you can switch. My arm that's closest to the horse can hold the horse, so that my hand on the outside, it's also holding the rope, can assist in cleaning her feet out. Okay, so even once I set it down, I'm making sure I'm safely out of the way, my rope's not entangled. I'm going to lengthen it a little bit to go to the hind leg. Hand that's the closest to the horse picks her leg up. Okay, she knows how to do this well. As I cup that under, notice the safety though. Okay, I can very quickly gather my line if she gets scared or something happens. I've got a rope long enough to be able to correct her and hold on to her and make her stand still if I need to in my picking procedure. Okay, so once I'm done, good girl. What you eventually try to graduate to is then being able to ground tie. And it's as it says. So the ground is actually tying the horse instead of being tied to a hook or a wall or cross ties. And so what you want to do is after you establish this, even just laying the rope over for safety is good over your arm while you're doing things, but the be-all goal here would be that the horse understands where you place them and where you set them is where you want them to be, okay? And I might make a few corrections and make sure she understands exactly where I want her to stand, but if I wanted to go through this procedure again, I would go back to my grooming box, whether it's my hoof pick or whatever it is, and I would make sure that I've established enough work and communication to make sure that the horse goes into groundwork mode, or ground tying mode, I should say, ground tying mode. So if I do pick her feet, I don't generally like if they do put their head down, especially if there's food. So I do try to make a correction and keep her head up. That's why before you get past too far into it, you want to make sure you've established enough behavior with the horse where you can make corrections. So if she were to go put her head down, whenever I go to pick her feet up, I would make sure she understood my expectation was to keep her head up. Keeping her head on the ground, they lean all of their weight on their feet. And so as you're under them or you're trying to do something and her head is in the sand, she's going to put more weight on her feet and be a little bit more difficult to work with, especially if you're picking her feet. Good girl. Okay. Good girl, Pixie girl. So what this then can transition to is you can transition this into then say, if we put the horse in the cross ties and we fashion a tie on this side and a tie on this side, I would expect her being tied to a trailer or being tied to cross ties to stand exactly the way she's standing and allow me to do all of my grooming, all of my saddle work, anything I needed to do with her. I've established the relationship on the ground for her to understand the expectation is that she stands here. Okay, good girl. We've worked many years on this pony, and it takes consistent work. You know, I got her when she was 2 years old and she's now 8. Even though she's 8 and you would think that she would be fully trained, and she is in certain ways, there are times that you have to refresh your groundwork. Always go with your groundwork because it's going to establish a relationship. And so if you start to just go get on a horse and become lazy or complacent, you're going to start finding issues whenever you get on their back and you start to ride them. And so establishing this relationship on the ground makes all the difference in the expectation of what the horse is going to do for you, including whenever you get on their back. Well, thanks for joining the grooming section.